Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie and we've got Malcolm Ginsburg back with us once again. Malcolm, we haven't had you for a few weeks, but as a result, we've managed to miss out on lots of interesting topics going on in the aviation world. What have you been writing about this week on Business Travel News?
Well, it's been a bit quieter. We're continuously getting involved, I'm afraid, with the London airport. It's the only thing. I was sitting last night, I can't remember where, the night before last, in France, in deepest France, on a scenic river cruise, would you believe? The guy sitting opposite me, very interesting, now you reminded me, the guy sitting opposite me was an 85-year-old ex-Canadian Air Force Transport Command pilot. He had flown and survived flying on the Comet 1. Now, for those who can't remember, the Comet 1 was the first jetliner, a beautifully looking aircraft. Unfortunately, it had square windows, which no one worried about too much until they started crashing. So they only ever had two Comet 1s, of course, and he fortunately, theirs never crashed. So he's still around. And his wife then suddenly perked up to me and said, "What's all this about London Airport?" So I had to go through the whole thing. Wherever you go in the world, people know about London Airport and its problems. And they know about it. It's because it is so popular as an airport.
Yeah. And yes, you're right. I mean, everybody is aware of it, and they're aware that it's a very confused situation. I mean, how have you been simplifying it for them? If that's possible.
I have to tell them that the problem goes back 60 years, 65 years, when a very, very clever civil servant decided that London ought to have a new airport. Croydon was in the wrong place. So he got the RAF to commandeer some land. And like lots of RAF fields of in those days, they named it Heathrow. There are other row type airports. They call it Heathrow. They commandeered this land in 6 months flat, and then they laid out a big 4-runway airport, a triangular thing. And that was the beginning. The Ministry of Defence actually only kept it for about 6 months, would you believe? As soon as they commandeered the land, then it became a civil airport instantly, more or less. Anyhow, 1946, and you've got the beginning of Heathrow. 1950, they rebuilt it. They took everybody over to Norfolk for about a year and got on with it. And then for the last 40 years, we've been arguing, well, it's not really big enough. We ought to do something better. And there's been all sorts of ideas. And what's happened? Absolutely nothing. And I think this time around, we will have the same sad scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, it is extraordinary. You reminded me, of course, of those fabulous black and white photographs when the RAF did hand it over. Heathrow was originally, as you say, it was pretty much it was a heath, and they had a row of tents, and that was it. You know, and a Handley Page sort of bomber that had been turned into a civil aircraft. So it's it does go back a long way, and as you say, we haven't really moved on since then. While you've been away, we've also had, in fact, I was away as well the week before last over in Holland. I went to Schiphol with KLM, who very kindly was showing me around their operations center, which is extremely impressive, and I think you would really be keen to see that if you haven't already. You know, that's controlling the entire fleet around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And also their social media hub, which is less kind of NASA control center like. It's more like an office, but it's still very impressive. There's 200 staff now, just under, and they're again 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're having somewhere between 70 and 90,000 conversations on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and the like, and in 14 languages. So in China and Russian, on Von Takte, I think the Russian social media preferred platform is, and they now do all of that kind of customer relation stuff. They do actually online, in social media, and these guys have real power to change things. And I was terribly impressed by them, and then struck equally with their partners, because KLM is absolutely bound like that with Air France, who are having such a terrible time at the moment. Have you been watching the Air France thing?
It's a very interesting scenario. If you go back about 15 years ago, KLM were not too stable, and there were noises made that they ought to get into bed with British Airways. Don't forget that the Dutch and the British have been together for many years, sometimes loving but sometimes hating each other. But generally, don't forget they burnt all our ships once. Over the years, and they speak English and they pick up Southeast BBC over there and all the rest of it. However, at the time the management of BA was involved with other things, and Air France came around with the offer it couldn't refuse. Unfortunately, Air France wasn't actually a very efficient airline back in those days, and it's got worse over the years. Somehow, KLM have, at least in some areas, have kept themselves at arm's length. But there is no doubt about it that Air France is one of the most inefficient airlines of them all, and characterised by the whole French social sphere. Fortunately for you and me, when we're flying, they don't take 2 hours off for lunch, which would be a bit worrying. But nevertheless, they're not known for their happy way of doing things, and certainly my experience on Air France hasn't been very, very good. They're not an efficient airline. The problem is that they want to become an efficient airline. They know what to do, but how to do it is a problem. So what they're suggesting to their staff is work a bit longer for the same money, and we're beginning to get more efficient, or the alternative is being sacked. Now, at the moment, the French rebels are back to the days of La Misrab, and they're putting up the barriers. And last Monday, there was some nasty fights concerning, real physical fisticuffs concerning Air France. There's
really shocking. The CEO and the finance director were physically attacked, and there's those photographs of them with their shirts and jackets ripped to shreds. It was quite a shocking moment, and one which the French government have been coming involved in, not least because the French Prime Minister and President, I think, have been saying how it's a disgrace, a national disgrace, and there's a lot of very heated arguments going on at Air France at the moment, as you say.
Yep, it's not a very good situation, but they have to resolve it if they want to stay as a national airline. Other national airlines have disappeared in Europe. We always felt that there will be three major European groups: Star Alliance, which is headed by Lufthansa, the combination of Iberia and Airways,
yep.
IAG, and of course SkyTeam, which is not only Air France, but it's KLM, and also, incidentally, and very important, Delta. The new boss of SkyTeam, the man that's going to really put it all together, one would hope, is a Delta man. And he may just be able to put it off, but there is a long way to go with Air France now.
Yeah. As you say, they're really stuck in a cleft stick at the moment, trying to get the staff, and particularly the pilots, to, as you say, work there for longer hours for the same pay, or lose 2,900 jobs are at risk, apparently.
It's not a large number. I don't know what the figure is for Air France, but there must have been 50,000-60,000 staff.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not a large number. And their biggest problem, of course, is people like EasyJet and now Ryanair, who are coming in seeing that it's an easy market to plunder. EasyJet have done it for some years, and Ryanair is trying to put its magic onto that. I must tell you something that I thought very hilarious this week, which I'm sure you must have spotted, was that Ryanair were accusing a company of misleading advertising. I saw that. I mean, they were the last ones. They claim to be clean now, but if anybody had misleading advertising, it was
Yeah,
right.
they used to get into trouble regularly. And yeah, well, hopefully, you and I have had this conversation before. Ryanair have actually turned things around in quite a large way, and they're really becoming a much more kind of responsive and customer-oriented airline than they used to be. You've been writing about Ethiopia and the plan to create an aviation hub.
Well, they've always been very keen on developing their north eastern part of Africa as a hub. If they were a little bit better organised, they might have got in before the Gulf states. The guy that runs the airline is an American-educated Ethiopian. They've got the 787. They've got plenty of people who want to move around, and they've got the whole of Africa as their market. So, and they have been saying for some time now that they really need to develop a new major airport. It will take time, and they do have Chinese money, so maybe there's something in it with the Chinese that we're not aware of. But I have been down there, flown the aircraft. Nice people, seem to be more or less a democracy at the moment, and I feel quite safe going there.
It's interesting that Ethiopian Air have actually been they've been standout dynamic in a way that a lot of African airlines haven't. As you say, they've been investing in state-of-the-art aircraft like the Dreamliner and really beginning to build networks and useful routes. So
they've also been very good in training. So they're one of the places that other African airlines go to because they know that the training is up to the highest ICAO standards, and they've got a university on the airport, and it's all quite impressive. I mean, they're probably now as advanced an African airline as any, with the exception probably of South African Airways, but they're one to look for.
I was struck, speaking of up-to-date equipment, today there were some photographs of Finnair's latest acquisition, the A350XYB, actually taking off from Toulouse on its delivery. I think it's in the air as we speak. So it's good to see airlines, equipping with the latest in carbon fiber.
Well, the thing with Finnair and the A350, it is the first European airline to use it. I've flown on the services on previous aircraft, and they have another one very similar, if you like, to Addis Ababa. They want people to fly into Helsinki and connect to the Far East from there. So you can go through to Shanghai, you can go through to Singapore and several other points, and then they're feeding in from the north of England and Manchester, for instance, and interlining with other carriers to drive the traffic through Helsinki. The 350 I've flown on, a couple of 350s now. It's an interesting aircraft. I rather like the 787, to be fair, because you fly at ground level, 2,000 feet, so you don't get so tired. It's not as big. I mean, it really is not as big as the other aircraft, but they get around that very easily by not making it 9, 10, or even 11 abreast. So certainly in business class on the Dreamliner, you're 121 or 222 or something like that. But it's a nice airplane.
I thought the A350 was similar in terms of, because the whole point about this is that being constructed now of the carbon materials, in the building the whole thing in the autoclave, you can get that extra pressure in there. So as you say, for the Dreamliner, you're flying on with a cabin that's pressurized. I think, is it 6,000 feet or something as opposed to 10 or something in that order?
The Dreamliner is 2,000 feet. The other one is 6,000 feet.
Oh, right, okay.
I can't remember the sizes I've had, but the A350 is up at 777 size. The Dreamliner's quite a bit small narrower than the A350. Qatar Airways, of course, being Qatar Airways, they've got both, and Vietnam Airlines has both. I did ask a very senior man at the Vietnam Airlines why they chose both, and they said it was purely for political reasons.
Oh, right. Okay. Not maintenance then.
No messing about.
You're right about Finnair and going for those routes. I was struck by the way that they kept appearing when I was doing searches only a couple of weeks ago for flights for my son to come back from Australia, and their route there amongst their options, as you say, via Helsinki. So they're clearly competing quite hard in that market. I noticed that you mentioned Vietnam Airways there and having the 787. The 787, actually, their 787 that they recently had delivered was the one that made that dramatic takeoff at the Paris Air Show this year. I don't know if you saw it, but there's some video out at the moment of the A380 doing something similar in Chile. Not quite as steep, but it certainly goes for it on takeoff.
Yeah, I actually flown on that aircraft. I must admit, I was a little bit nervous because I don't like passenger aircraft are built to fly nice and steady at 500 miles an hour, 40,000 feet. No nonsense. And doing these fancy takeoffs, which are perfectly legal and perfectly safe and structurally okay, I'd leave it to the F-15s or whatever.
Well, it was. We all remember that ghastly one at that. Was it Paris Air Show when I think it was an Airbus A340. I think it had four engines. Can you remember it came down? It's too low and it was losing height over the woods and it went into the.
There was a 320 that I can recall that had a nasty accident in an air show. Can't remember the free.
Yeah.
Maybe we're done, but there we are.
Either way, okay. Let's wrap it up here. You may have seen, if you're reading the show notes on the event page for this event, or indeed the blog, the Travel Coffee Break blog, that actually this will be the last of the weekly hangouts. It's getting too difficult to get organized every week and get guests in every week, and for that reason I'm going to go for as it were an ad hoc monthly basis. Malcolm was saying to me just earlier before we started that perhaps we should do it still on a kind of a regular thing, so the first Wednesday of every month. And that's what I'm going to aim for the next one. So that will be in the middle of World Travel Market. I'll be doing it from there probably. Malcolm may join us from there or from back in his home office or wherever he is. And I will have a bunch of other guests, clearly, because that's the place to have them with me anyway. So hopefully we'll have a nice World Travel Market hangout on Wednesday. I think that's probably around the 3rd of November. So do join us then. Meanwhile, from Malcolm and I, bye for now.
Yes, and I'd say that I should actually be on the A350 today, but it was too much. It was a day late being delivered. Don't tell anybody.
Well, their loss is our game. So congratulations. Okay. See you when we see you next month on the first Wednesday at World Travel Market. Bye for now.